Arizona has the highest positive coronavirus test rate in the entire country, and the governor still isn't issuing a mask mandate, but he is acknowledging there's a problem.
What we've gone through and the challenges that I'm sharing with you really is Arizona's new normal, and it's our new normal for the foreseeable future. I really want to ask people to get their heads around that this is going to be a challenge that's going to be ongoing.
NBC News reporter Vaughn Hillyard joins me now from a new federal testing site in Phoenix. Vaughn, Governor Ducey says that dealing with coronavirus is the new normal, but so are testing demand and delays. So how will this new site help address those testing problems?
This is big. It's July 17th, but it's progress. This is one of two federally backed high-capacity testing sites here introduced today. Each of these two sites are going to be able to test 2,500 folks a day over the course of the next 12 days. We should note they're telling folks that they should expect their test results in 24 to 48 hours because they're actually shipping the tests over next door to Irvine, California to be processed because here in Arizona, there's a significant backlog, and most tests are taking anywhere from 7 to 10 days. That's why this is significant. It is also in two predominantly communities of color here in South Phoenix, heavy Latino presence. And when you're talking about testing and the significance in these areas, I want to just let you listen to a little bit of our conversation with Phoenix Fire Chief Rob McDade.
People don't know, they're scared. They've got young ones. They've got to try to go to work. They weren't getting the testing. FEMA arrives. We have 60,000 kids. We want to use all of them. We want to get these folks tested, and we hope that this is a success, that we can get as many people tested over this week and a half span.
Phoenix Fire Captain McDade would go on to note, the fact is that in a lot of these communities, you have multi-generational homes, and you also have the reality that you have a lot of essential workers, service workers that are living in these communities. And so if one person in a family gets COVID, there's essentially automatic exposure to others in those families and others in those neighborhoods, Allison.
It's so important that folks there have access to testing. Vaughn, what are you hearing from people who are there, who are getting tested today?
I'll just introduce you to one of the fellows that we met, Louise, who says he's a transit worker, one of those essential workers. And, you know, the issue is when you don't get test results over the course of more than a week, folks are largely still going to work, even if they have some, basic symptoms, because number one, they need money in their pockets, but also they're essential. They've got to keep these the systems here in the economy going in Arizona. And that's why this 24 to 48 hour turnaround is so important. And I want to let you hear directly from Louise, one of those individuals who came here today.
Being out in the streets of Phoenix, airport, etc. And then plus finding out about 4 coworkers were diagnosed with COVID. So I just want to take the more precautionary reasons, especially since I have surgery coming up.
And because you're going to work still every day.
Yes, sir.
Do you feel symptoms?
Mild headaches. This is more just a precautionary thing. I believe I don't have it, but there's people. There are people out there who are asymptomatic.
Louise said, quote, "I don't believe I have it." That's why testing is so crucial, because at the same time, you heard him say that he has a slight headache, but he's also been exposed to 4 of his coworkers have already tested positive for COVID. And yet, God bless him, but he's still going to work. There are no requirements here in the state, Allison, that these places of work, whether they be restaurants or retail, have to shut down if their workers have test positive. And there's no state rule that requires these businesses to inform their patrons or those that are using public transit that there are positive COVID cases around them. And that is the issue and why it's so important people like Louise come here today to get those tests.
Vaughn, I know Arizona is in need of more help than just testing. What other help is Arizona getting from other states from around the country?
One of these issues here is the fact that federal resources appeared to be limited. And that is why you have seen frustration from states around the country here. This is FEMA's first operation. FEMA partnered with the city of Phoenix and with the Arizona National Guard to put this on here as Arizona continues to be a hot spot, because you're seeing essentially a flattening of the number of cases here in the state over the last 4 or 5 days. But that's because there's also not been an expansion of tests being conducted. And you've seen still that percent positive rate to be about 23%. That's where these partnerships here are so crucial. We should note the state's main laboratories, Sonora Quest Laboratories, which has processed about 80% of tests to date. They said that they plan to expand and be able to process up to 35,000 tests a day here by the end of this month with new machinery that they've brought on from an international company. A lot of this is hope. A lot of these are expectations that are being laid down. And what we do all know when you talk to doctors and ICU nurses that are working in these hospitals, as you know, hundreds of nurses and other healthcare professionals are coming into the state, what is still needed here is that expansion of testing, and that's why today is progress, but even more needs to be done. Allison.
Vaughn Hillyard, it's the end of the week. I just want to thank you so much for all of your hard work this week. We are so amazed. We know how hard you're working. We know how hot it is out there. We're so grateful for your important reporting on what's going on in Arizona. Thank you. Georgia's governor suing Atlanta's mayor over masks. Governor Kemp says that Mayor Lance Bottoms exceeded her authority when she issued stricter coronavirus orders in her city than the state. Meanwhile, coronavirus cases in Georgia are up more than 60% in just the last 2 weeks. NBC News correspondent Blaine Alexander is in Atlanta with more.
Well, Allison, we've seen this debate play out really all over the country when it comes down to the question of will people wear masks and should they be required to do so. But we're seeing this escalation, possibly the biggest escalation right here in Georgia, where we're seeing the governor suing the Atlanta mayor and the city council, seeking to block the city's mask mandate, the mask requirement put into place. So I want to have you hear both from the Democratic mayor and the Republican governor. You both are accusing each other of playing politics during this pandemic. But I'll have you hear directly from them. First, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms of Atlanta, who spoke on Today.
This filing of a lawsuit is simply bizarre, quite frankly. I don't think it happenstance that this lawsuit came the day after Donald Trump visited Atlanta, and I pointed out that he was violating city law by not having on a mask at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport.
Now, the mayor's office tells me that they're going to continue to let their decisions be driven by science and data. Now, it should be noted that the Governor Brian Kemp, says he's not against masks. In fact, he is actually encouraging people to put on masks. But he says that when it comes to enforcing them, when it comes to requiring them to do so, that takes it a step too far. In fact, he repeated during a news conference today, he repeated what he said several times, that Georgians, he says, do not need a mandate to do the right thing. So I pressed him on that during that news conference. I asked, at what point are you going to switch from encouragement to enforcement if you look around and see that people are not wearing their masks a week or 2 weeks after encouraging them to do so? Here's how he answered that question in part.
Well, what kind of message does it send when you have mandates already that people aren't enforcing? It sends the message that the mandate doesn't mean anything. I'm asking people, you know, government is not going to be the answer to all people's problems.
And both the mayor and the governor say that if it comes down to it, they both believe that they could win in court. In Atlanta, I'm Blaine Alexander, NBC News.
Parents and teachers in Detroit in court today. They're asking a judge to shut down in-person summer school classes, claiming the school district is using summer school as a test to see if schools there can reopen in the fall. NBC News correspondent Heidi Prisbilla joins me now from Detroit. And Heidi, what did the judge say at today's hearing? How did things go?
Allison, the judge quibbled about the jurisdiction of this case. She did not quibble with the content or the nature of the argument, but she did believe that this should be filed in a different court. So this is essentially amounts to a delay. The plaintiffs here are a coalition of parents, teachers, and activists who say that there should not be public schools open during the summer, that Detroit is effectively conducting a massive experiment on the children of the city of Detroit, and that this is the only place in the country that has such a massive school system. 23 different schools, Allison, that are open for summer school. They're busing the children in. They say that it is very unsafe, given that the CDC says that one of the main risk factors for the spread of COVID is the opening of schools. And this is happening at a time when COVID here, like many other places in the country, is notching up. And it's a place that has already seen a significant amount of deaths due to COVID. They had gotten things under control. So this case continues. It will just continue in a different court, Allison.
So what is the school district's argument? What is their defense here for why the kids should be back in the classroom and why the school district thinks that they're safe?
Well, firstly, they say that this is parent-driven. They say that this came from demand from parents who believe that their children are not learning, that their children are falling behind. They say that it is voluntary and that, look, this is one of the most impoverished cities in the country. When these kids went out of school in March, they didn't get Chromebooks. They didn't get computers. They didn't get the tools and the resources that they needed to do virtual learning. And so, therefore, many of these kids are being held to the same standards as children in other school districts that did get those resources. They're just not being given the resources. So a lot of families are really faced with a difficult choice here about whether they let their kids fail or they put them into these schools, trusting that these safety protocols are going to keep them safe. Take a listen here to one of the teachers and about what she had to say about their concerns.
I absolutely am concerned about my colleagues. I'm concerned about my students. I'm concerned about my community. I stand here today for every teacher who is afraid to go back into a classroom, every parent who is afraid to send their children back. I stand here today even for those in-school administrators who are pressured from central office to make these decisions and push this through against their better judgment.
Why do you think this is happening?
This is happening because we have a lack of leadership in this country.
And Allison, you heard her talk about the administrators there. This is not just about the parents, it's about teachers and some officials who are very concerned that a lot of these schools have decades worth of poor infrastructure problems, bad ventilation. The GAO, the Government Accountability Office, was just out with a report last month saying that over 50% of U.S. schools do not have adequate ventilation. They need their HVAC systems replaced. That's a known risk factor for COVID. So this case will go on. However, summer school here ends in the middle of August. So this delay is a significant setback for the plaintiffs, Allison.
Yeah, and Heidi, as we look to the end of summer school, to the beginning of the fall, I know parents and teachers are very concerned about that, what that will mean. Has the district said what it's doing to protect students and faculty going forward?
The school board educators that I talked to said that this does not necessarily reflect what's going to happen in the fall, because this is a massive school system. We're talking about 53,000 children here, considering elementary and high school education. And they're not going to be able to have the kind of protocols that they can have in a summer school program where you have just a fraction of that participating. And so the governor here has made very clear that she will use her powers to stop any school system that she thinks is sending kids back to an unsafe environment. Unclear whether she's going to single out Detroit and get involved here. One of the plaintiffs today, in speaking with the judge, was asking for exactly that, going after the governor, saying that she should be using her powers to shut this down. But the Detroit officials I talked to say they don't know what they're going to do in the fall because they understand that they have an overcrowding problem, they have a problem with poor infrastructure, and that what they're doing now may not be germane to what they're going to do in the fall.
Heidi, it looks like this is a problem we're going to be talking about for a little while more. Thank you so much for your reporting from Detroit.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.